Okay, welcome, planning leaders. We're convened in a work session on the comprehensive plan, March 25th, 2026. So Oliver, I think we'll start with you.
Oh, just briefly.
Yes.
Um, Thanks for coming. I'm just hoping to get out of this session just more information. I don't know a lot about this topic, and so you know a lot. So what I'm trying to get is more context for each one of these parcels. Like, what does the city want to do with it? What do you know about the context of the area? Does it have urban growth? Are there environmental barriers to development, like wetlands or slopes? Just would like to learn some context about each one of those sites so I can understand the decisions we have to make better. So.
And if I could just also recap, the council's request for today was to look at the site-specific requests that the cities are requesting to bring in. The cities did present their information to council in December. I did send that to council as a reminder. But there was a request to look at the parcels using Google Earth and then answer any questions regarding tying it to the ag study. So I'm not sure, Councilor Lowe, if they're going to have all the information. I know most of the information has been presented before by the jurisdictions, but that was the focus for today, was the aerial view, so that because that was a specific request from council, and then to answer questions on the ILA, or not the ILA, I'm sorry, the ag study, tying that to that.
Good. There may be some outstanding questions still, but we'll get more information today.
And if there are questions regarding the city's request, we could certainly type those up from council and send them back to the cities and get the answers from them directly too.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, so good morning, councillors, chair, and members of the council. For the record, my name is Oliver Ojiako, Community Planning Director. This work session, councillors, I'm billing it as informational work session. You're not going to be making a decision today. So it's more informational, and as a result of that, we have our legal counsel here for questioning, and we also have the land use program manager in my shop, Mr. Jose Alvarez, and myself. So we are here to answer questions. I have asked GIS staff to be online. So I think some of my staff may also be online. So councillors, I know that you are not having a hearing to select the preferred comp plan alternative to study in the final EIS. I really want to, just as an informational work session, to provide some background which will help you in the decisions that you will make in the future. Prior to expansion of any urban growth area, there is a requirement in the GMA. But before I say that, remember that Clark County is one of the fully planning county under the GMA. What that means is that the county has to plan fully, and all the RCW and all the work relating to GMA, the county is obligated to follow that. That's what fully planning under the GMA means. And the requirement for, and prior to you having a hearing on the selection of the preferred plan, my staff and I will provide you a staff report outlining and citing all the relevant RCW, Revised Code of Washington, that relates to sizing of urban growth boundary. You will receive that and read it on your own. However, there is part of that RCW, I don't have it in front of me, but we will cite that in the staff report that we will provide to you, that prior to expansion of any urban growth area. There is a requirement for demonstration of need and to take what the RCW refers to as reasonable measures to increase capacity prior to expansion of urban growth boundary. I bring this up because in a form of a background and information to council, staff doesn't make the decision, you do. And as I have been sharing with council over this process, the council has authority to pick the population we plan for. The county has the authority to approve the allocation to all the cities. The third authority under the GMA given to the county council is the selection of urban growth boundaries. The cities can propose, but you, the council, will have to make a decision whether to grant that or to deny that. That is the function of council, not the cities and not staff. So I will say that, which is a fact, that the council should know, the county has lost on a question of need and lack of taking reasonable measures before granting urban growth boundary expansion with the growth board. And this is an issue in Battleground. I believe it was in the last plan update, periodic update, where the city proposed to bring land that is not even designated as agriculture, but rural land. But this question of need and taking reasonable measures, when the county was challenged, both the county and the city of Battleground agreed in order to come into compliance to remove that area in their UGA. Two, you hear very often about urban reserve, urban reserve. Urban reserve is not urban. It's not urban. Urban reserve is like an overlay. Areas that has urban reserve is outside of the urban growth boundary. The cities cannot touch those areas. They cannot annex them because they are not in the urban growth boundary. The cities can only annex properties that are within the urban growth boundary as adopted or approved by the council if that action is not challenged. Today, what we are going to do is the first part of this work session is going to focus on the criteria for designation of agriculture and the criteria for de-designation of agricultural land. That's the first part. The second part of the work session will focus on what you asked for, Councillor Little, on the site-specific request. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is, I was going through the background. I wanted to just set that, put that into as part of this informational work session so that the council is aware. So we'll focus on de-designation criteria, then site-specific requests in the series proposals. Then we'll talk about next steps. Go to the next slide. I know that the council have seen this. This is our 4 general phase of the periodic update. The reason I provide this to you and to the public is because it helps guide the public, the cities, and everyone watching and following us to know where we are. And I don't have to go through the 4 phases the council sees all the time. You can see where we are in terms of all the areas checked out. We are in that 3rd phase, review and refinement. We have completed the draft EIS, and then we had the AG study, which I will get into. And the next thing there is the selection of the preferred. The Planning Commission, you participated in the joint hearing with the Planning Commission. They deliberated separately and make their recommendation to you. So that will be the next thing that the council will do. I'm hoping that this will be the last work session relating to the comp plan, but you never know if there's any. We would like to have those so that we can get direction from council prior to your hearing on the selection of the preferred. But that selection of the preferred alternative will be the next steps for us to then do the final environmental impact statement and then update our comprehensive plan text and any development regulations we have to do to support those plan policies. And I think I've mentioned to Clark County Council that we are required as one of the fully planning counties in the state to follow the checklist that the Department of Commerce asks the county and the cities within the county to fill out. What that checklist is what Commerce will use when we get to the 60-day review submitted to Commerce. They will use that checklist to see that we complied with all the new regulations that the legislature have passed. That is why that checklist is important. My staff have done that and sent it to Commerce. They have sent us areas and new laws that we have to be mindful of. So as you can see, the public have been asking me, and I said, no, I cannot update this schedule until the county select the preferred, so that I can then use that and work with my staff to update this schedule from the time you did the selection until completion or until your adoption. Remember, I said last time that that would take us about 5 months. Why that long? It takes about 3 months for the environmental consultant to finish the EIS work, and then for staff in coordination with RTC and transportation folks to complete the travel demand model and other things that they have to do to support the preferred plan. And that is why it would take that long. And then the adoption process, that is straightforward. You will have planning commission hearing, your own hearing, there'll be work session and so forth. And then you do the final adoption. Your final action in terms of adoption per the charter will not become effective until 10 days after your action. That is in the charter. It's not staff, it's just what we have to follow. So go to the next slide. So let me start with, because I know this was requested of the council, whether it was Councillor Young or the full council, but let me go to the criteria for designation of agriculture and criteria for the designation of agricultural resource land. Councillors, I will be very brief. There are 3 major criteria for designation of agricultural land per the GMA. It is the core factors that counties are required to follow. The other requirement, although we did, when I say we, I mean the county didn't do that, some other counties may have, but the law requires counties, when the law was passed in 1990, to first designate your resource lands first, before you consider areas that are not non-resource, and then that is what the law required. So while the law, the GMA was passed in 1990, it took the county started the designation of identifying resource. When I talk about resource, I mean agriculture, forest, and mineral lands. The county started that work, and it took the county with the task forces that they appointed almost 3 years to complete that work before the plan was adopted in 94. Why am I bringing that up? The reason is that the first time that the county designated agriculture to comply with the GMA, that action was appealed. not by the development community, not by friends, not by future wise. It was appealed by individual property owners and Clark County Citizen United. That's who appealed that first designation of ag land in Clark County. And the history of ag designation and litigation, staff have documented that in what we presented to council or submitted to council in what is known as issue paper 1. So I will also encourage council to read that issue paper 1. But it's safe to say that they lost. The court found that the agricultural designation and the process that the county took in that process was consistent with the Growth Management Act. I will also say that, and some will disagree, that since that original designation of ag, the county has not been successful in the designation of ag land. And what had been happening and is continued to happen is that, like I said earlier, after the allocation of both population and housing, the cities will go through their own process, engaging their residents and so forth, and will then propose a boundary to county council for your approval of or your rejection. In the past, they have included agricultural designated properties. And the council should know that the only reason that they have been successful, and I know some of them are listening and watching, is because they annexed those lands prior to the Growth Board and court ruling on it. So they use an annexation to circumvent the court or the Growth Board ruling on that action. And this was the case in Commerce, the case in Los Santos and Richfield. In 2 periodic updates that have happened. And then the legislature closed that loophole. And you can find that in RCW 3670A067. That's the new rule now, where the cities are unable to annex or property owners to vest on land designated as agriculture. Now, let me return to the criteria for designation of agriculture and the criteria for the designation. Councillors, you will find this in WAC 365 190 050, Section 3. And this is what is often referred to as the 3-part text. That 3-part text is: 1, the land is not already characterized by urban growth. And this is why I said earlier that urban resort overlay is not urban. So in the case of the land is not already characterized by urban growth, here the issue you get into is parcel size, what are the residential densities in those areas that are outside of your agricultural designated resource land. They're not urban. So this is what they mean by the land is not already characterized by urban growth. The second part of that 3-legged stool is the land is used or capable of being used for agricultural production. Here, what they are really emphasizing is looking at soil capability, crop coverage, present use code indicating whether the fellow is, the property owner is you look at livestock and other agricultural activity, that is what they mean by the land is used or capable of being used for agricultural production. The third section of that three-part test is the land has long-term commercial significance for agriculture. And this particular third section also has enumeration of 11, what I will call 11 non-conclusive criteria for long-term commercial significance. Again, here, the issues is often relates to, are you considering prime and unique soils? This is in addition, and I will go through this particular section because it talks about classification. The number one, this 11 talks about classification of prime and unique farmland soils. And councillors, what your staff here is reading is from WAC 365-190-054, section will be C, that 3C. So,
Can I ask a quick question?
yes,
About criteria A,
yes,
on characterized by urban growth, if there was a acre of a hayed field that was good soils and all that stuff, but it was surrounded by urban growth, like high rises, would that be characterized by urban growth? What has the court said about that?
I'm not sure that the courts have seen exactly that.
Or something, I guess that was an extreme example. So the
Mhm.
acre is surrounded by what is characterized as urban.
1 acre. So 1 acre sounds more, it depends. What are the good soils? B, it's generally not great to have a piece of land that is 100% surrounded by urban areas. The issue, one of the issues being that, okay, you have resource land on one side, ag land on one side, you have urban on the other side of a line, and you bring the ag land in, you have made the next parcel over closer to being surrounded. So
I guess I'm
it
mostly,
very much depends.
yeah, but it's not about if the acre is characterized by urban growth. It's about what's around it, right?
Oh, no, it's not. It is, if you want to de-designate that acre,
Yeah.
it is about whether the acre is characterized by urban growth. That is
So-
what the law is.
Okay. The acre itself, it doesn't matter what is around it.
I did not say that.
Criteria A. I'm just trying to get what the definition is.
I gave the lawyer's eternal and favorite answer. And it is so true. It depends. So I don't think we can give you an always answer, but I have to say, I don't know of any situation in which people have ever asked for, let alone fought about 1 acre of land.
Okay, well, it was 100 acres, but if it was characterized, if it was already designated as ag land, I imagine it can't be urban because you wouldn't be able to build a parking lot or high rises on that. So I think I would assume the criteria A is about what is surrounding it.
No,
No.
that is not the case. I have argued this
Yeah.
at the growth board, at the courts. I have read innumerable case decisions about this. It is not about what is surrounding it. It is about that land.
Chair,
Yes,
I
go
think
ahead.
I could help clarify. First of all, I think this slide is incorrect on the title. I think it should be agricultural designation criteria, not de-designation.
I believe those are the same.
They are exactly the
I'm
same.
going to come to that because they are the same. I'm
Right.
just, I'm just
Okay.
coming. Yes.
But A is really about the parcel itself. C, which has 11 discretionary criteria, one of those 11 discretionary criteria talks about what exists around it.
That's very helpful, if that's what it
Yeah.
is. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, right, yeah, we can continue. So, in terms of the C, here you have soil. Let me just go through that. This is long-term commercial significance. Councillor Little, no, Councillor Young, the criteria, I labeled this criteria for designation and criteria for de-designation. They are the same. For you to designate, you use this same criteria. For you to de-designate, you have to make a findings that contradicts all these criteria. That is why they call it the three-part test. If you meet one of them and don't meet two, you will not be successful. That is why they call it the three-part test. If you meet one and don't meet, let us assume you meet this C and you fail to meet, the land is not characterized by urban growth, or the land is used or capable of being used for agricultural production, I think you will not be successful. I'm just putting it out there because, and our legal counsel can chime in, the ag study that was done did provide the council with legal, they did a legal review, and which I don't believe, I can't remember what exit that is in, but let me go through this. So you have, on C, you have soil. This is when I talk about prime and unique soil. You have availability of public facilities. You have tax status, availability of public services, proximity to growth areas, predominant parcel sizes, land use settlement patterns, nearby land use intensity, going back to what Councillor Little is saying, history of nearby development, alternative land use values, and proximity to market. When you look at these 11, I call it non-conclusive criteria, proximity to market and proximity to urban growth areas. Either way you look at it, you can say, yeah, if it's or availability of public facilities, if it's road, that will also support proximity to market because you have access. So depending on how you look at this, it is just challenging to say this one is more important than the other. That is why this is listed and called discretionary. I call it non-conclusive because you can find anything, whether you're looking at tax status, you're looking at soil, you're looking at land use settlement patterns. These are the criteria for designation of agriculture. It's also the criteria you have to use for the designation. There is another section in WAC, and I think it's WAC, the same 365 190.040. Okay. If you go to 10B, it talks about the designation of resource land can undermine the original. I'm reading from this, Councillor, so bear with me. 10B1, this designation of resource land can undermine the original designation process. Designation threatens the viability of natural resource land and associated industry through conversion of incompatible uses and through operational interference on adjacent lands. And then it talks about what you may also consider, in this case, the council. But it brings you back to 35 365-190-050. But in addition to that, councillors, it talks about change in circumstances pertaining to the comprehensive plan or public policy related to designation criteria in WAC 365-190-0503. It talks about change in circumstances to the subject property, an error in designation or failure to designate, new information on natural resource land or critical area status relating to the original or to the designation criteria you found in WAC 365-190-050 section 3. And you can see what other things you have to consider. But I think what staff was getting at is that given our own experience and court cases and the litigation here in Clark County, I'm not saying that the council should be mindful of litigation, but this three-part test, as I indicated, is the hurdle that the council will have to overcome in the designation while you use it for designation of agricultural resource land. You have to use this same criteria, what they call the three-part test for the designation of agricultural land. All must be met for the designation, not just one, as I was saying earlier. So let me go to the reason for the ag study. Now, some will say that staff was making policy. No. We have been sharing with our cities throughout this process that this WAC 365-190-050, Section 1, says that counties and cities should not review resource land designation solely on a parcel-by-parcel basis. Very clear. You should not review resource designation solely on a parcel-by-parcel basis. County and cities must have, it talks about must have a program for TDR prior to designating agricultural resource land in urban growth areas. So it was this section that says counties and cities should not review resource designation solely on a parcel-by-parcel basis that we shared with the cities. As you are considering requests for expansion, if that is the last resort, try as much as you can to avoid inclusion of resource land. That is why we made it clear to our colleagues and our city partners that inclusion of ag into their proposal to the county will require a county-wide planning, a county-wide review of resource land. And they brought that issue before, not this council, but I think before this council, but the previous council, that the WAC requires a county-wide analysis of ag land. And that section of that WAC is what prompted the previous council, and I believe numerous times that this council had hearing on the selection of the preferred to study. You directed us to commence that ag study, which we did the RFP and completed. So I have a copy, and I know the council had a copy of this as well. The consultant that did this work came before you last November and presented their findings. What I can say is that upon reviewing this, we have no interference with their work. It was done professionally and thorough. I would say that coming to your comment earlier, Councillor Young, the ag study addressed every criterion, in my opinion, in WAC 365-190-050, Section 3. If you, which I know the councilors have done, if you review the study, you will find that starting from page 32 through 62, you will see that they did what was asked of them. On page 37, they provided analysis of indicators of long-term commercial significance for agriculture. If you go to page 37, you will see their discussion and findings relating to prime and unique soils. If you go to page 41, you will see their discussion on public facilities. Page 44, you will see their findings and discussion and analysis on tax status. On page 47, availability of public services. Page 49, proximity of urban growth areas. Page 51, predominant parcel size. Page 53, land use settlement patterns. Page 56, intensity of nearby land uses and history of land development permits issued nearby. Then page 57, land values under alternative uses. 58, proximity to market. They also included on page 58, water rights. And I recall that the council asked them to also look at food security, and you will find the analysis and discussion on that on page 61, I believe, is where they discuss and address food security. So that is my summary of the criteria for designation of agricultural land and the criteria for de-designation. Like I said earlier, council, you're not at a hearing to consider the recommendation or proposal from the cities. You will make that decision when you go through the selection of the preferred alternative, whether to accept what the cities are requesting or not. I mentioned that we will provide the council with the criteria or all the work and RCW relating to sizing of urban growth boundary. We provided that to the Planning Commission. You will receive it as well. The only thing I will say, having done this for a long time, is that it is my responsibility as the planning director to present all this information and analysis to the council before you make your decision. If you have questions for me or our legal counsel, I will stop there before we go into the site-specific requests and the maps associated with them, so that you can see what we know about some of these properties. It may not be, I don't think it will be Google Map, but Jose will do that. The reason I asked our GIS staff to be online is because the aerial photography here may be old. I know that the county do a flyover every year. I don't know whether they have done that and how soon would that be updated. So I will stop there if you have questions for me before I turn it over to Jose.
Okay, thank you very much. That provides a good context and history. Go ahead.
Yeah, this
Councilor
is
Little.
really, really good information. When you quoted the parcel by parcel, cannot review these parcel by parcel, how do you review a city's proposed parcel if there's only one parcel? How do you not review it parcel by parcel? I don't, what's the alternative? What do you review if you don't review that one parcel?
The
That is,
agricultural study.
yeah, that's why the agricultural, that's why that was the link to the why we did the agricultural study. You have to look at it county-wide.
Oh, it's not implying that we can't review a parcel.
Well, that depends on the basis of your review and decision. What the growth board and the courts and the WACs have said is that you have to review agricultural lands when you're talking about designating or de-designating on a county-wide basis to determine whether either designating them or de-designating them and what the effect would be, what the impact would be on the agricultural industry in the county as a whole.
Okay, but it wouldn't imply that you would have to de-designate every acre that's designated all at once, or that you would have to designate all of them or de-designate all of them. You
No,
can still
that's-
go parcel by parcel to make a decision, right? That's
I think that is a very worrisome and risky thought.
I'm just trying to understand. I don't even.
So, and this is an issue that I've been thinking quite a bit about. And I think, you know, you're accurate when you say that we have to look in the context of the entirety of the county. But the ag study has gone parcel by parcel. I mean, when it looks at soil conditions, it evaluates parcel by parcel, whether it fits the categories or not. When you look at land use patterns, when you look at, you know, adjacent intensity of uses, you have to.
I'll tell you
weigh each
that
parcel.
the consultants in doing the ag study took countywide data and put that on a county map. They didn't go to a parcel and say, what's the soil here? Okay, move a parcel over. What's the soil there? What's the soil in another place? That's not how it's done.
But each parcel was added to their findings based on its specific conditions, that it met certain parameters.
I would say not.
It was a landscape analysis, is how I look at it.
Yeah, the other thing that when it comes to going to your question, one of these things that the act requires is being used and capable of being capable of being used for agricultural production. Councillor Little, you and I have talked about this before. There are various data that is used. One is the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service. That's the soil map. Yes. And then you also rely on the United States Department of Agriculture maps. So you look at all of this. Sometimes you look at crops, coverage, the various layers that you look at, and you put them side by side. You don't know, because these are secondary data, you don't know how they compile, but that's what is available. So you rely on that information. The soil, yes, you will see often when you look at the soil map where a prime soil will extend beyond where the parcel you're looking at, and just, you know, runs whatever, how many ever miles. So the act is requiring you, if you're focusing on soil alone, you have to include these other parcels that meet that criteria. So it's not just, yeah, you're looking at this on a parcel by parcel. The other thing is, okay, for example, are any of these parcels in current use, taxation? They also talk about, are there, what do they call it? I think the council have talked about this before. Do you have a local public rating system in place? Some of these parcels may be in current use. That is supposed to be considered. And the other issues, when you talk about land values, you will know that appropriateness to urban growth boundary, that there is pressure, the value of that property will be much, much higher when compared to another property that may be 2 or 3 miles away from the urban growth boundary. So they are, what Chris was saying is that you don't look, and that's why the act says you don't look at it parcel by parcel. What the cities, if you recall, what the cities did was at the request of the property owners for them to include agricultural land, they went out when we were telling them that they have to do a countywide analysis as is required by the statute or by Washington Administrative Code. We did not accept those parcel by parcel studies that were done because we have done the same process before when the county in the past accepted parcel by parcel studies done by Global Wise. You may hear about him or the firm. And we did our own internal classification, and the courts and the growth board threw that away, not following a county-wide analysis, getting to impact of the agricultural industry, because what the law says is that hence you designate your original agricultural land. I went through the section that says that the designation really impacts the original designation. What the statute is really saying is that hence you designate, it is upon you, the county and the cities, to work together to find a mechanism to protect, enhance, and support agricultural activity in your county. That's what it says. And that's why you look at it countywide. How is taking one property off? How does that impact the overall industrial activity, or not industrial, but commercial activity in your community? For example, I may be growing hays to support someone who is raising cow and other livestock. So if you take me out, for example, it impacts that supply, for example. If I'm also growing hays and exporting it or doing something, I am practicing agricultural activity in my community. So if you take that piece out, you are impacting that agricultural sector. That is why this is said you must enhance, protect, and support agricultural activity. That's all I can say, councillors.
Thank you. How would you look at nearby land use intensity if you didn't look at the parcel and looked at what's nearby?
That councillor, that is your role now to look at and find a reason why you think a property should be designated. It's not staff.
Okay, so in that case, you can look at the parcel.
You can.
I mean, I don't know how else you would do it. Look at the whole county and see if Skamania I just don't understand how you would do
So-
that.
Yeah, Counselor, that,
Go ahead.
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add two things. So there used to be a provision in the WAC that talked about area-wide or county-wide. And the area-wide was struck, it was removed because it gets into these issues. The idea, the requirement initially when the act began was you'd identify these areas first, and then you're protecting them. So anything that wasn't designated agriculture or forest or mineral was fair game for urban development. So that's how I think we need to look at this. And so the order of operation has been, had we started this initially and said, okay, we're going to revisit this. This is what the study says. These are the limits of where urban should be. Would the city have come up with a different urban growth boundary expansion? That's the perspective that really needs to be addressed. That those are that's the primary thing.
Okay, thanks. I'm still totally confused on nearby land use intensity and how we would look at that for a proposal from a city to look at one parcel. How we would not look at nearby land use of that parcel.
You can look at the nearby land use. There is These criteria, none of them are dispositive, and some of them are more important than others. The Growth Board and the courts have made that clear. So you have a commercial area next to an agricultural area. Does that mean that the agricultural area is changing? Well, let's think about that a little bit. You have a parcel that was agricultural and then it was brought into a city and de-designated. And then some commercial development was built there. Next to that is an agricultural parcel. You're going to de-designate that and bring that into the city because it's in proximity to a commercial parcel. And it's next to another agricultural parcel. That is the absolute definition of urban sprawl. And that is exactly what, well, it is one of the things that the WAC was, that Dr. Orgiaco read. It's one of the things that the WAC was talking about when it says if you de-designate agricultural land, it can have a negative impact. It's risky because you can just keep on going if that's your reason for de-designating. Well, it's next to something. That is not the way that resource designation was intended to work.
I have a few things to say about nearby land use intensity. So we've been farming in Clark County for 66 years, and we've seen how things have developed. And, you know, looking through, and I would really encourage everyone to read issue paper 1 because it provides a great history of legal and land use patterns of how things have impacted agriculture. And I would say we haven't done a good job in protecting agriculture. Even with the GMA, we've lost a lot of agricultural land. And the intention was that with some of the rural lands, as I've read through the information, is that those rural lands were to become buffers to the resource lands. Well, we haven't upheld that. So what we have in a lot of cases is, in some cases, intense urban development right next to agriculture on 179th and 11th Northwest, intense urban development across the street, 80-acre parcel of ag. Now, you wouldn't want to de-designate that 80 acres just because there's a lot of density across the street, and that density is going to continue. There's no buffer. And our history has been, there was a narrative that informed previous councils. Well, let's just divide everything up into 5-acre parcels because, well, erroneously, they thought that would make it more affordable. But if you often have a 5-acre parcel, that's multi-million dollar home that gets put on there. And when I've looked at some of the site-specific ag studies that were done that were talking about nearby intensity, they were talking about some of those 5-acre parcels. And it was like, if you stand in one spot and look one way, well, it looks like there's a lot of development. But if you turn around, there's a lot of agriculture. So it's as if we've encouraged these conflicts across the landscape. And we have an opportunity, I think, with the ag study, because the ag study verified that the designations that were done are upheld in that ag study. But it also revealed there's a whole lot of prime agricultural land that was not designated. Uh, and with some of those, and I feel like some on the council may be looking to try to pick out information to justify expansion onto ag land without looking at the whole picture. And then cluster development is another example. You know, we haven't had that rural buffers to protect ag land, but we've gone about cluster development on resource land to put in 1 acre parcels and theoretically preserve the remainder parcel for that resource. That's not always happened. And then you could look at all those 1 acre parcels and say, a lot of development going on here. You know, does that justify continuing to parcelize the land? The problem is we've sprawled and we've parcelized the landscape way too much. So, you know, and we can continue to do that. It's a policy decision that this council will be making, but it will be to continue that pattern that hasn't held up at the Growth Management Hearings Board. So that's a difficulty in trying to look at nearby intensive development with the neighboring agriculture. Oh, and the other factor that's come into play is that many of these landowners, they may just not want to farm anymore. The soil is still there, the criteria all holds up, but if they're just haying or if it's just fallow, you know, there's no forcing a landowner to farm. But the soil and that land bank to be used for agriculture still will support the long-term economic viability of agriculture in the county.
Sure. Good points. Following up in that line of conversation, when the county designated agriculture lands, was there a significant acreage that was missed that would still qualify under the criteria, or did they pretty much all get designated, in your opinion?
Councillor Little, that's a very good question, and I will answer it this way. Yes, there were two in terms of history, because I was here, even though I wasn't assigned to work on rural matters. I was doing predominantly urban housing, land use, and economic development. There were two groups put together, and I will just wrap that up quickly. Farm focus group and agricultural focus group. The two groups could not agree on what, after they've identified all the areas that should be designated as agriculture and forest, they couldn't agree on about 35,000 acres. If you read the issue paper 1 that I mentioned and issue paper 1.2, talks about rural land and agriculture. So when these two groups could not agree on 35,000 acres, whether it should be agriculture or forest, staff at the time, and I will say staff at the time, which is true, convinced the council at the time to designate that 35,000 acres ag forest. So, as I mentioned earlier, the property owners and CCCU sued the county. And the court ruled that the GMA does not allow for a hybrid. It could either be agriculture or forest. So the county lost on that action. And the board at the time commissioned another committee to look at that 35,000 acres. And if you talk to my favorite commissioner, Betty Sus Morris, he will say, yeah, during my time, we, because, you know, rightfully so, Oliver will say, yeah, I don't have anything, I support property rights. And I said that openly. There were folks in the rural area that felt that the act was very too restrictive. And the commissioners at the time granted all those properties to become Rural 5, Rural 10, and Rural 20. So to answer your question, yes, there were some areas that were, the two groups couldn't agree on what it should be. And that's how ag forest came into be, and then we lost on that. I don't know if you have anything
Well,
to add, or Chris.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's a very interesting thing in that issue paper one, that the committee split and they came up with opposite conclusions.
Right.
One conclusion was there's no long-term economic viability of agriculture in the county. That was one position. And the other position was there is. And both positions were deemed, I guess, relevant. So we're arguing an argument that's been going on for decades, and the conflict still exists.
Yeah, but I don't know whether our legal counsel wants to add anything, but that was my answer to you. Yes, they did find some areas that should have been ag or forest, but as the chair indicated, because of that disagreement, that's how you hear about, in terms of history, ag forest. But that ag forest was eventually went to Rural 5, 10, and 20. Had one group prevailed, it should have been more ag designated or more forest designated.
Okay, thank you. It sounds complicated.
Yep.
And it sounds like there are potential lands that could be designated, but there is no proposal in front of us from any of the groups to designate any ag lands at this point, right?
I think there's definitely a desire, but at this point in the stage of the update, if we did designate any additional lands, I believe that we'd need a new EIS.
I think you'd need a new 10 years, but that's just a thought.
That new 10 years will start in 27.
Yeah, something like that. If you have taken a look at the agriculture study, you will see that it has maps that show what could be designated based on its soil and other characteristics as agricultural land that is not now agricultural land. So I think that is also an answer to your question. A fair amount of that is where the ag forest was. A lot of it, the ag forest was north of the Lewis River. And that's the history of it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's correct.
Just one quick comment. And Chair, I agree with pretty much the entirety of what your comments are. One of my frustrations really is that we have not, there's a lot of things that I would have loved to have considered, and time is constraining us on that. I would have loved to have spent significant time looking at the lands identified as potentially possibly being able to be zoned ag. And I expect as we complete the comp plan process for that conversation to continue full steam. The one thing I would say though, and I do agree with your history. This is an issue that you're passionate about, that you've been involved with a long time. You've got a history in there that most of us don't. The one thing I will say is that we're at where we're at now, and we can't change that. And, that the past doesn't justify not looking at all of the criteria too, ignoring parts of it. There's a reason why these particular things are listed in WAC of things that should be considered. So that's the only thing I would say. Again, is that we're at where we're at, and we still need to look at this inclusive in the entire sense of the county and the agricultural system as it exists. But also we have to consider land use patterns, nearby intensity, and things like that. So I look forward. I'm hoping to move on here and be able to get to looking at them.
What criteria do you think has been ignored?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's been ignored, but there was decision. There were,
Just did.
in my opinion, there were policy decisions made on what to look at and what to study and to what level to study it that I think should have really been addressed by the council. So, I mean, there's things listed in there like land use settlement pattern. I mean, we've talked about this. If it doesn't have an impact on whether land is to be designated or de-designated, it wouldn't exist in WAC. But the study, based on, you know, conversations that happened between staff, between the consultant and the Agricultural Advisory Commission, decided that they really weren't going to look at it.
It all was subject to public input as well.
Councillors, not to draw you back, because I know some of this issue before Jose goes into the site specific, but councillors can review the work by yourself. If you look at B1 under work 365-190-050, it says the intent of the landowner to use the land for agriculture or to seize such use is not the controlling factor in determining if the land is used or capable of being used for agriculture production. Land enrolled in Federal Conservation Reserve Program is recommended for designation based on previous agricultural use, management requirement, and potential for reuse of agricultural land. The reason that we point these things out is that, as I often say, when, depending on your action and those that review what the council do or done, this is where they go to and point out. And whether your action is consistent with any particular section of RCW or WAC that they want to cite. In the past, the county have used, for example, tax base and economic development opportunity. And to my knowledge, the court have said no. That was in the case when we did the Rural Industrial Land Bank, arguing for tax base on behalf of the Battleground School District. We lost on that as well. So, and I cited this section about the difficulty when you start or the community or county starts revisiting the original designation and finding a reason to de-designate, that is really very challenging. And I said to myself, it is going to be your call, your findings, whether you look at this, the third criteria, and want to use any of those to make a decision or make a finding one way or the other. That's going to be your call. All I'm pointing out is that this three-part test is what is often referred to, that you have to meet all of them, not just one. So Jose, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Young's comment about it kind of, we're at where we're at. I do believe there's a need to have more flexibility than we currently are looking at here. And I think the opportunity to do that would be in a TDR, a future TDR program, or that 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 that some of the counties have adopted, and that could actually result in a net gain in agricultural resource land. But I do not see a pathway to do that within this comp plan update. But as much as we can adopt some policy or have commitments to make sure that that happens relatively quickly. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Okay, Counselor. So the site-specific requests, what we're going to focus on are these 4 urban growth area expansion areas. I updated the slide to have a link to the site-specific requests. The existing site-specific request map that we created, we've added the aerial photography to that, so they couldn't access the other alternative maps that we use internally, but the same information is available there. So I just wanted to be clear about that, and then I'll share my screen and we'll start looking at the maps. Okay, so we're starting in La Center. The black dots are the site-specific requests that we received. The area in red is, the outlined area is essentially the preferred alternative that the Planning Commission recommended, which is consistent with Alternative 2. The area to the north is C1, so the city's anticipating that to be commercial. The area in blue to the south is industrial, so they're anticipating that for commercial industrial land. And just to on the east side of I-5, there's a little area that's also proposed to be commercial. The
Councillors, as Jose goes through this, go to the north. You can enlarge that, go to the, you can see that white area or that, see the square. Jose, you can take your cursor to that, where that property, just as FYI, the city is not asking for that property to come in, but that property is still zone ag, so you know. So even if you were to accept what the city is requesting, you got to deal with that donut hole. Just letting the council know that you have that.
How many acres is that donut hole?
We can get that as when you go to your hearing. I'm just pointing that
I think
out.
it's less than 5, and I think it's a utility station. So that's probably why they didn't include it. There's no real utility for them, but
Got it.
yeah. Sorry.
You want to do the,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So let's see. And this is the aerial photography. The most recent version that we have is 2023. Let me take this. So I'm just going to try to take that off so we can see it a little better.
And do we see how many jobs they propose for like that one?
So we don't have the specific numbers. We can get those. Generally, commercial, we assume, is 20 units per acre. The industrial is 9 units. Well, yes, 9 units per acre. So you're going to get a higher concentration of employment there. The other thing I'll point out, I think the city's brought up the issue of the tribal land. This property with the black dot was sold to the tribe December of 2025. just additional context. As well as the property that's currently in the urban growth boundary, but abutting where they're proposing to expand was also purchased by the tribe last year. But that hasn't been taken into trust yet, either of those properties.
Do we know if there's any action to do so?
I don't know, but typically,
We don't know.
Yeah, we typically find out after it happens.
the other thing I wanted to point out is that, let me zoom out of here. These areas that are the black dots beyond what was proposed by the city in alternative two were site-specific requests. We included those, and because the council wanted to have all of the site-specific requests included, and that became part of alternative three. And those areas, all of the areas with the black dots with a couple of exceptions that I'll show you were all proposed to be included or were all brought into the urban growth boundary as part of the 2007 comprehensive plan update. And there was all ag designated property, and we lost appeal on that back in 2007.
Okay, could you say that again? What part was already tried to be brought in, but it was rejected, you said, by the courts?
Let me show you. Let me zoom out. So with the exception of on the south side, everything on the north side was brought in 2007. On the south side, everything but the two dots there to the west and the area just to the south, which is currently zoned R5. Everything else is and was at that time zoned ag, was brought into 2007. I think the city wanted to do the expansion in anticipation of, or in case the tribe hadn't gotten their status yet. And so they were trying to anticipate that. So those areas were all brought into the urban growth boundary back in 2007. And we lost under appeal. At the time, the city didn't take an action to annex the areas. I don't think the area that's currently going to the west wasn't part of the city limits at that time. So they didn't take action at that time to annex that land. So that was already part of the appeal process in 2007.
For that, on the southern area there, the little part that's on the east of I-5, is there a connecting road? Is there access back and forth?
I don't think there's a connection across the highway.
You'd have to go out north to
I believe that.
the center to take that exit to access that property. Yep.
Let's see if we can see it on the aerial.
We can check, there's no road across there. You have to go into the center and come down.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
That's a crossing that Ridgefield has been going to DC trying to request appropriations for. Right there. That was what I understand. But yeah, not built yet.
This is La Center's request, though.
Yep.
This property.
Or yeah.
I think it's further south.
Oh, maybe it is a little further south near
Yes.
the Ridgefield one.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Closer
And
to 19.
And when you said it in 2007, it was brought in, but it was lost under appeal. What was the basis of the loss? Was it the de-designation or?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And it was the north acreage as well as most of the south acreage.
Correct.
Okay.
And for the land that the tribe has purchased, could you go back up and show what that is or how much
Sure.
it is left that the tribe has not purchased? Because they have the ability to develop there even though it's designated ag.
So there's an area outlined in blue, and that's all of the lands currently in trust that the tribe owns. So it doesn't include lands that they own but that aren't in trust, and those were the couple that I showed. That I mentioned.
Those were the couple that I wanted to make sure I understood what those were.
Right.
Yes, and in the ag study, this area was also not included as ag. We have shared with council that as part of this comp plan update, just as FYI, we will work with GIS with the approval of council to identify all the land that the tribes have taken into trust so that it will not show up as ag. And, you know, as I said earlier, we have the tribe in our coordination and consultation with the city. So they're sitting at the table, we're asking them questions to let us know what areas or properties that they have interest. But I won't follow them. They have to go through processes before they can tell us what their plans are. But to our knowledge, this is the properties that have been taken into trust, and we will make sure that we show that in our comp plan going forward.
Okay, and then the area above that they purchased, I'm just curious about
Right,
what
so
they
the-
purchased that's
the-
not in trust.
So where the arrow is now was one purchase, and then where the black dot is the most recent purchase.
Okay, and then there's those two other parcels just to the
Yes,
east that,
those are owned separately by.
okay,
Chair.
yes.
Just not, it has nothing to do with the designation, but I think it's important for the public to understand the implications of the land being taken into trust. And correct me if I'm wrong, it is sovereign nation. So once that land is in trust, they can do anything with that land that they choose, including non-agricultural uses.
Well, and also, I don't know what arrangement the tribe has with the city of La Center, but what the city of La Center can do with land that is within its boundaries or urban growth area, but has been taken into trust is a question that I have had. But in general, yes, you're correct. If it's in trust, it's sovereign. They are the sovereign, and the county does not have jurisdiction to tell the tribe what to do on its sovereign territory.
The center may have a handle on all of this, but I just wonder if this changes any of their assumptions about jobs and housing.
And in addition, I'm wondering if their request is still to us to include the portion that has been sold to the tribe but is not yet in trust. Do we know if it's still part of their proposal to us?
I have not heard anything to the contrary.
Okay, have we
When,
had enough about the center?
yeah,
Okay, let's move on.
Did we look at the southern, isn't there a southern portion that Lysander is asking for?
Yes.
Did we look at that? Oh, well, kind of. I don't think we ever saw the aerial though
Okay.
for that portion.
I think there was some concern about wetlands and it's zoned ag, correct?
yes.
Yes, it's zoned ag, again, except for the piece on the east side of I-5. Everything on the west side of I-5 is zoned ag.
What is its current use? I mean, it looks like there's a lot of pavement there. Is that what I'm seeing on here?
might have been a home business or some type of, not sure.
I drove this one and I did see a parking lot and some derelict vehicles on one.
Did you say did see
Oh,
parking lot or
here's the
didn't?
Zoom.
Okay.
So that, what we're looking at is currently zoned agriculture.
Correct.
Are there requirements that it has to be in agriculture and not whatever it looks like it's in right now?
Yes, but I'm not sure what the history of.
It, I would guess, isn't in the current use program. If it is, we should take a look
Right,
at that. I'd be curious what the use is.
Okay.
The other thing I'm curious about too is, are we aware of any adjacent areas with like any kind of a master plan or considerable development?
There, if it's outside the urban growth boundary, there wouldn't be
Okay.
any.
And where is the urban growth boundary in relation to what we're looking at right now versus the city line?
So on the, let's see,
Go back to the larger map. So let Jose show you the current.
so the urban growth boundary is really this extension, just that portion that goes across I-5, and then it follows it down. So all of the tribal land is outside of the urban growth boundary. And then, yep. So where that red is going across.
And then where is I mean, the black dotted line is the UGA, so that in the center of the page on the north side, that's city jurisdiction.
I'm sorry,
Where is the city line?
yeah, it's the same. The UGA and city boundary are the same.
Oh, okay.
They've annexed all of that.
Okay.
So it's that blue line
Yes, the
is
dash.
is the dashed blue line.
Yes.
It's the city. Yeah.
It's a city.
Yes.
Correct.
That looks like a whole lot of open area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I think this is the areas. Not sure if it's 2007 that was brought in, and their junction plan. I think they have a master plan for that area, just east of the highway along from the interchange down south. They have a junction master plan, but I don't think there's been any action on development of that.
How long has that existed, and what is the use and intensity of use of that in the master plan?
I'd have to
We
look.
have to look. I think their master plan or sub-area plan was recently adopted. And yeah, we've been, well, yeah, it was recently adopted. We can reach out and have the city provide that when you have your hearing.
So just as I look at this, they have vast swaths of land available to them.
Jose,
Yes.
sorry.
No, that it was just I'm marveling at this.
Just looking again at close up of the southern parcels, which ones were not included in the 2007
The
vision?
site specific requests that were so the areas that aren't within the highlighted the red areas, let's see,
all of the highlighted in red stripes
Yeah.
was part of the 2007 decision that was reversed?
There may have been a boundary line adjustment for that portion that that sort of sticks down. It went across at
Okay,
that time.
that little,
Yeah. That little notch
might
there.
be new,
Right.
might be the new one. Okay.
Okay, now our Counselor Young, did you have something?
No, sorry. I had
Okay.
slipped.
Ready to move on to Ridgefield?
Yes.
Great.
So Richfield, yeah, there are really two areas that were in the preferred alternative. To the north, just south of La Center. And that's what these areas look like. To the west, you can only see there's a subdivision there, and that was the area that was brought into the UGA in 2016. Again, that was designated ag. We lost an appeal. They annexed the properties. And so that's that development to the west. And then there's a little notch there that was not brought in at the time. It's not being requested to be brought in currently, but it's also designated ag. And so that would create another little donut hole.
Jose, can you remind me what the dot means? Is
It
that
was a site-specific request,
okay?
the black dot.
All right.
So
And then is there any coding on this that shows us what, or it may be all of it? Is all of it ag land or
Yes.
just portion?
All
All
of
of it
it.
is? Okay.
So that remaining farm there, it looks like there's been no attempt to do any kind of buffering to the adjacent agricultural land. Or maybe
Not-
that's a statement rather than a question.
Yeah. I, no, I don't have an answer. That's an observation. Yes.
Chair?
Do you mean the farm in the notch there? Which farm do you mean, Chair?
The notch, that
Yeah.
looks to me to be a
Well,
farm,
it's-
but really they've got development right that they've allowed right next to agricultural land. which-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chair?
And coming from, I believe, the 2016 comp plan is that land was brought in 2016. So here we have the illustration of take a piece of ag land, bring it in, develop it, and now we'll ask for the piece of ag land next to it to come in because it is adjacent to it.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Is this the one that has what's called an urban reserve on it? And can you tell the history of how that happened? And what it means?
I'm gonna say that yes, the county did put urban reserve in some of these ag designated properties back in the days, but that's the history of it. It's not only this property, there are other properties throughout the county after the adoption of the plan in 94. And some were designated as agriculture, some were designated as rural, and because they're very close to the edge of the urban growth boundary, we applied urban reserve. There were no intensive study to determine whether those properties are likely to come into the urban growth boundary in the future. The only distinction here is that when the urban reserve was challenged, that is the urban reserve overlay was challenged, and Chris may correct me if I'm wrong, what we said was that the underlying zoning which is controlling, in this case, agriculture, is controlling that didn't go away. So the property is still designated as agriculture and should be preserved as agriculture. That didn't go away. So you didn't do a designation. You just have that overlay, urban reserve. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, go ahead. That was a little bit of the history. There are some other areas where we have urban reserve, but they are outside of the urban growth boundary. They're not urban. They're not developed with any intensity to show that they're qualified to be brought into the urban growth boundary. We've known all along that as the county continues to grant expansion, if you will, that at some point we're going to be at the age where the next property is ag. And that's what we found ourselves each time the county grants expansion into ag property.
And what was the intent, if you were there, of the urban reserve being put on that space there? What was the intent, do you think, by the county?
There are some areas, and I don't know whether that applies to this area. There were some areas where the planners at the time put urban reserve overlay, whether it's 20, urban reserve 10, with anticipation that the county will continue to grow, and at some point, you may put the urban reserve 10 or 20. It doesn't carry a lot of weight, but the policy is to prevent further divisions, if you will, so that when you bring that property into the urban growth boundary in the future, you will get some utility. But if you allow it to develop into fives or whatever their legal laws are, you may lose that opportunity. But I think that was the thinking of the urban reserve. Urban reserve, if you look at it in the same way that it's looked at across the river, it is an area that you anticipate will eventually in the future become urban. That is the view from the Oregon planning principle, if you will.
I would just mention that in the metro area, they have rural reserves that they've developed too. They're an exception to the rest of the state.
I agree.
Okay, that's helpful. So the intent, as you understand, was to keep it whole so that in the future, if it came in, it would be developed as a whole. Okay, thanks.
Our legal counsel.
But I don't think there was anything that required that it be kept whole. That's the difference between urban reserve and urban, or that's a difference between urban reserve and urban holding. And so there's no code to say, oh, you can't divide this into anything below 10 acres, I mean, except for the agricultural code. Whereas there is urban holding 10 and urban holding 20. You don't have there just isn't an urban reserve code with requirements and prohibitions in it.
So it was just the title? Did it come with any meaning?
Well,
Well, it was a title. And then in 2016, staff proposed a code that would do a couple of these things. And for reasons I do not understand, but this is what happened, that was appealed by FutureWise and Friends of Clark County. And the growth board ruled that was urban, that code was urban. And so the code was struck down. So what we have is still urban reserve as a comp plan overlay, but doesn't mean a heck of a lot.
This is good context. Thank you.
so there are additional site-specific requests to the east of I-5 here in Ridgefield. And those, again, were part of the alternative three, that the city had a different plan. But so just showing you those, and that's what this looks like. And again, it's just the black dots. Um,
Real quick, going back
Uh-huh.
over to where we were, are they hay fields? Is that what I'm looking at? It doesn't look like there's,
That is our interpretation from the aerial.
okay.
As you know, your staff cannot walk into those properties. We have no authority to do so. But looking at, and I mentioned earlier that this was aerial photography of 2023. Yeah, but this looked like hayfield, if you will.
And I don't have it here, but we can overlay to let you know if any of these properties are in current use or were, and just what the history.
That would be good to know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe some of them are, yes,
Yep.
but we can provide that information to you.
And was this proposed for housing or jobs or both?
So this is a mix of employment and jobs. And I think it's mostly for employment. Let's see. Yeah. Employment, mixed use. I'm trying to remember if what the breakdown was of it was either 80-20 or 60-40, with employment being the majority of it. But we can provide that for you.
So that large pink area south of that, that is within their growth boundary?
Yes.
Because that looks again like large swaths of land that have yet to develop.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Could we
maybe.
turn that aerial back on?
Let's see what's going on there. It could be parking lots.
Yeah. And I think that might be just to the south is where the Costco is.
So this is
maybe
an
not.
older photo.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said,
Okay,
there's just
okay.
2023.
All right.
Good.
And on the other side of the freeway, has that developed yet, or do you know?
I'm not sure if.
And that's in their growth boundary as
To
well?
the south. Yes.
Okay.
And directly, well, yes, this area here, the employment.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead. Are you going to
I just wanted to show I think there's the one,
piece the mall property?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the mall property to the south.
And how many?
That's surrounded by, I mean, completely surrounded by the urban growth boundary city limits.
Right. And is that developed around it at this point? I think it may have.
I think again, we didn't go out there to look, but the aerial photographer will show you that it's likely that it been developed around it. Going to what Councillor Little was saying earlier, this one is a good example where one can make. I'm not asking you to, but you can look at the surrounding land uses and intensity and be able to make a call here one way or the other. I think the history of this has been very clear that when the city annexed the ag prior to the board ruling and the court ruling, I don't know what happened, but this property and the property owners didn't participate in that annexation. But had they become part of that, this would have already developed. But this is the mall property. So you can see what is surrounding it, and it's just inside the urban growth boundary in this case.
Sure. And is this where they were proposing a potential fire station and a senior center.
I think that's why it's residential, medium density, mixed use. The PF is public facility, so that seems to be
Right.
accurate.
I think it was one of 3 sites that the
Right.
fire district
Was
was
looking
looking
at.
at.
I think
Councilor
there
Young?
were-
No. Okay,
Let's go to, let's go to where you're going, Battleground or Commerce?
Well, there were to the south. There were a couple of other properties there.
but those weren't part of the city's request.
Don't think. I can't remember if the city included this in their alternative 3. But yeah, it seems like this.
Something on the east side.
We showed
We
that.
showed that already.
It's to the north, on the north side.
We just see a visual of that zoomed in,
Okay.
please.
That's the
So that is one of the city's 3,
alternative. Yeah, they
the
included
dot right there, or
there's 3 dots there, and then
the
2
4
more.
dots. Or,
Yeah.
Should be 2 more to the,
Yeah.
right, these 2.
Okay, all of those dots are part of the city's
Alternative
proposal and
3.
alternative 3.
3,
Correct,
yes.
Yes.
And when the planning commission made their recommendation, did they include this one?
No,
No.
they just kept the properties to the west of I-5 and then the mall property that's surrounded.
And these were proposed by the city for residential?
Let's see. It's not in, I'll have to find it for you.
Thank you.
Anything else on Ridgefield?
No, I think that's it for Richfield.
So there were no site-specific requests we received for Battleground.
I think they received them directly. I think there were, but they received them directly. They
Yes.
didn't
Yes.
come to the county.
Mostly on the east side.
Now, we have received some communication, people concerned about this extension to the west related to wetlands and streams and things like that. But if this came into the growth boundary, and if they were successful at annexing, the city codes would govern all of that.
That's correct. And, you know, the council know very well, it's not new. When you see the critical layer coverage for Battleground, it is just wet all over. So this is not unique.
And could we talk about Meadowglade a little bit? Because Meadowglade was,
Sure. Okay.
I
Oh,
want to
go
learn
ahead.
a lot
No,
more
go
about
ahead.
this. Is this part of the swap and is this,
Yes.
Yes.
okay, yeah, if you could just explain as much as you can. And this is Dollar's Corner, right?
Yes.
Right here.
Yes.
Okay.
To the west. So essentially the city underwent a land use process several years ago. And what they came up with was this plan they realized that they needed more land for employment and not as much for residential. The areas to the south, that's in Meadowglade, They didn't feel like there was going to be much utility out of that. There are some subdivisions in that area that are already divided. It's a unique area because it has the step system there, so it's has sort of a sewer, but it's limited capacity. And so, as part of their process, they came up with a master plan, I believe, and that's what this is reflecting. This expansion to the west to include most of Dollar's Corner, and most of the area, and all of the area is going to be for employment. Yeah. So West Side employment and regional commercial is, I think, their zoning.
During one of our meetings, there was a comment, and I had asked a question. I don't know that I ever got an answer to it, but the comment was that much of this land was identified in the ag study as potential ag land. Do you know what areas of this was identified in the report?
Um, so I think all of the
Fluff it out.
all of the area that's outside of the Dollar's
Dollar's
Corner
Corner.
Rural Center. So the
Can
this
you show,
area, I
can,
don't have the
can you show Dollar's Corner?
well, yes, I don't have the outline of it, but essentially all of the area in blue is from the growth boundary to the east, probably to about this line here is the area outside of the Dollar's Corner Rural Center. Everything in red is within the rural center. And then let me show you.
So the whole rural center will be coming in their proposal?
To the north, from north of 219th. Yes.
Yeah, that seems tricky to me when you have urban growth areas abutting or, consuming rural centers. Is Meadowglade is a rural center also.
Correct.
Doesn't make sense to be rural at that point.
Yeah.
It won't be.
It won't be eventually if the county approves the request from the city of Battleground, that will become urban and
And if they successfully annex, because I know Meadowglade, their policy is people have to be willing to come in, and Meadowglade has not been
Yeah.
willing.
that's my understanding. Yes.
So,
Sure.
go ahead.
I did hear from constituents in Dollar's Corner that had concerns about this, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about the staff recommendation and the planning commission recommendations. I think were different. Was the staff one supportive of this swap, and then the planning commission said ultimately the city should keep both?
Yes.
Then with that, I was wondering the reasoning for your decision and also or recommendation, and also what impact it would have on the city or the county on us if we took back the Meadow Glade.
I think for the county, I wouldn't say that it will have an impact on the county because currently the area is not yet annexed to the city of Battleground. Therefore, if it is, I don't know what fire district they are in. I think currently we will be the one, like the sheriff, responding to that area if there is a call. So that all those haven't changed. So if the Meadowglade area comes out, it will still be status quo.
Okay, I guess I meant, is there a benefit to the city taking on some of the infrastructure needs, or is there tax implications that we should be aware of?
I,
Wouldn't they have to annex it to do that?
yeah, they will have to annex it in order to,
And
yeah.
it's been in for a while. And I have not heard of any desire or intent to annex that area.
Yeah, that's councillors. Typically, this is what happens. What is that? When you're in an area that has sewer, your interest to annex to a city is very, very limited, unless you sign a covenant that you will not refuse annexation when the city come calling. So in this case, uh, like I said, it will be the status quo. I don't think that the property tax, I don't know, but I don't think that the property tax assessment will change. As you know, that is based on value and market factors. But currently, this area is not annexed. Sheriff response will be under the county. Road maintenance will still be under the county because it hasn't been annexed. I don't anticipate that there will be any additional development out here. The property owners out there may resist further divisions. So if this were to become in the rural, becomes rural, the council and us will be considering what rural designation will it be? Would it be 2.5 or would it be 5? Because there, as you look at this, you will see that there's some areas that have developed prior to I don't know when this were developed, but you look at the area, some of the development that have occurred is because of the fact that they have this step system in terms of sewer availability. I know that their line is tied down to the Salmon Creek line, but other than that, it will still remain rural, in my opinion.
And last, sorry, I'm trying to get an understanding of what the recommendation to include the Dollars Corner area and what the county would lose or gain.
The Dollars Corner area, the reason we made that recommendation, as Jose was saying, is that the city has done their master planning for almost 2 years or more and went through that process and then decided that they do not, and you heard from the city, they do not need land for residential growth. They have within, and this is what I was saying earlier about need and taking reasonable measures. The cities have done that, but where they fall short is in employment. So they are much towards Dollars Corner. They see the value in that area becoming both commercial and industrial, and that is their goal, if you will, just to meet the employment allocated to them. But in terms of residential land, they said they have enough to accommodate the growth that was allocated to them. So this is the cities. That's why we made the recommendation. And you're going to hear from them. They may disagree with the Planning Commission recommendation, but you're going to hear from them when you have your hearing.
Do we lose anything in this?
There isn't very much, in my opinion, that the council or the county will lose. If this area is annexed and developed as residential, the tax base and everything will go to the city.
Yeah, and I think the justification for swapping goes back to that need. It would be hard to justify expanding further when they already have all this land. So it makes sense to take some out to get some that has more potential. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I know that the GIS has not identified any wetlands, but that doesn't mean there isn't necessarily. I've heard conversation about some wet areas in there. There's always that potential. Some of that just won't be identified until development starts taking place. But I did have a request to see if you could gather some information. So from my understanding, the city is working on a master development of some significant acreage elsewhere in the city. And I'm wanting to know how far along they are in that process, whether anything's been adopted or not, and whether the impacts to the changes in their zoning is being considered as it currently is zoned or as it would future be zoned if it hasn't been changed yet.
Yeah, I know my staff are listening and I'm taking note, and as well as Jose. We will ask the cities for that information.
Great,
And
thank
hopefully
you.
be prepared for them. If they provide an answer, we will share that with you, or we will ask them to be ready when you go through, when you have the hearing on the selection of the preferred.
And that land's already within their growth boundary and I believe annexed, or maybe.
Meadow Glade is not annexed.
Oh,
It's-
no, I'm talking about the additional.
Oh, the information you need is land within the existing urban growth boundary, yes.
But it is within their existing, but I'm curious how they're changing it and
Yes.
what the impacts would be on their ability to provide jobs and
Sure,
housing.
we will ask. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on Battleground? Were there other, I think there were some other requests.
There was there were some in all three, which the planning commission didn't recommend.
Yep. So I think it's not showing on this map, but I think some of these R5 properties to the east of their UGA, these larger properties, and I think it might have been the state that was
Hosting land.
was asking to
Right.
for that, and then there was a request in this area here that's split zoned R5 and Ag 20 was a site specific request that came in that was part of their alternative 3.
So was that something that the city was requesting or outside of that?
Like I said, we because council wanted all of the site specific requests to be included, we included that also. I'm not sure how the city, I think it's listed on, I think, one of the city's submittals that they
Right. I think
provided to us.
it gets a
where
little
they outline.
confusing because those requests went directly to the city, but
Right.
my recollection is it wasn't the
Wasn't
priority
really-
for the
right.
city.
No,
But there's another area to the north of the city.
But
right.
Oh,
before
go
you,
ahead.
did you say there's a state request in
I
there?
think the properties were owned by the
The
state.
DNR
State was
DNR.
asking us to do something?
didn't come to us. I think it may have gone to the
They asked
city.
the city of Battleground
Yes.
to, as a site
Include that.
to
Right. Yeah.
include it. Yeah.
And the
I-
city said no.
I don't think the city is interested, but it could be some land that, if that we could acquire for parks if we were interested, might be a good land swap.
Anything, we don't know any context for it. Okay.
I think Ross Hoover may have been making some inquiries.
Okay.
Yeah, and they weren't resource lands. They were all zoned R5. I think
Sure.
generally in that area.
I don't think I ever got really an answer on my question about the identified land from the ag report. I mean, do you have just like an estimation of percentage of
Oh.
the expansion area that was identified in the ag study?
Of what could potentially meet the,
Yes.
I think it was close to 30,000. There's a number, yes.
In
the
Dollars
report.
Corner?
Oh, no,
in
no.
total.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
So-
in,
Just in this specific request, in the Dollars Corner request is what I'm.
I should have that. I think someone asked and I did some calculation and estimated, I can't remember off the top of my head how much that is, but I can share that with you. So I know I responded to someone's inquiry related to that.
Yeah, I don't want to speak off the cuff, but I think it's maybe closer to between 300 acres or less, but Jose will get the numbers for you and email it to you. just in the Dollars Corner area of areas that meet the criteria for designating ag land. No one requested that, but we can get you the acreage.
Right.
It is
There is an overall map too, if one wanted to look at
Yeah.
how much, because there was a whole lot identified
Yeah.
as meeting the
Yeah.
criteria. Okay, that little piece to the north.
Oh,
What's the story there?
I think these are two areas were for residential.
And they're rural at this point.
Yes.
And is there ag to the west of those properties? Or are they rural as well? They might be in the current use program though.
Let me see.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get clarification. We're looking at part of alternative 2 or 3? Is this part
This-
of the city's request?
This is part of the city's request, and it's all alternative to,
Involved?
no,
No.
no. So this is, it should be all R5, and you see the Ag 20, a few parcels to the west. Yep. Yep. So it's all R5 and then Ag 20.
Staff recommended this one as
Yeah.
well as the planning commission. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, we finished Battleground?
I look to Jose, but I think so.
Yeah,
We'll go to Camas.
Good.
And that should be the last.
And then, yeah, just Camas. And we're almost up on noon, but I think we can take the time to finish with Camas.
Yep.
Yeah. So the first area is the airport that they wanted to include. And then so all of these properties that were part of the site-specific request, the property furthest to the northeast in this quadrant is zoned R10. Everything else is zoned Ag 20.
And are those parcels 5 acres with all the dots?
Yes.
Okay.
Roughly, yes.
And councillors, this is known as the Navin property, just for context.
And it's all ag? Did I hear that right? Or
Except for the property to the northeast, that's zoned R10. This one right here.
oh, okay.
Everything else is.
And those divisions occurred. I had asked before if this was part of some cluster development or if these had this been subdivided pre GMA or at some point along the way,
That's what it appears to
Pre-
have been
pre
pre.
GMA.
The the only thing I'd say is that there's a process that you can do with these non-conforming lots where you could do a lot reconfiguration, which essentially would allow for all of those 5-acre lots. Essentially, you're doing a reverse cluster development. So you could cluster all of those lots into 1-acre lots and have the remainder, one large remainder that would only be developable if it's brought into the urban growth boundary in the future or as an ag resource land. So those can be combined. So you have, if you're looking at that northeast quadrant, that's roughly 20 acres. You could combine all of the, I think there's 16, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 16 1 acre, 5 acre lots. So you could combine those 16 1 acre lots into 20 acres and then have the remainder be open for either agriculture. You can see the black line is where the urban growth boundary is. So if they wanted to do, you know, in the future, if Camas is growing and then they want to consider expansion of the urban growth boundary in the future, this is a way to preserve some of that land and also allow for the landowner to develop some of the property without losing the majority of it.
Could they do that reverse cluster now without
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
it in? So there's development options that
Yes.
could be available. Okay.
Sure. And so what I heard from the landowner is that he testified that he could sell these as McMansions,
Mhm.
17 of them
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
And that he's been holding out because the city has an idea of doing like a mixed use development here for jobs and homes. Is that your understanding on either of those?
So initially, the city didn't include this in their proposal. They did receive that. They did, I think their council wanted to consider this so that they wouldn't lose this in the future. The city, originally it was for housing and then it became for employment. So it's really not clear that looking for whatever would protect this land. The capacity they have for employment, for housing far exceeds their need. So there, it seems like the plans are changing from,
So they need jobs more.
I don't think they need either.
They don't need any more land.
This is going to be very hard to justify on a needs basis.
And what was the planning commission's decision on this?
They
Parcel?
left it out.
Left it out.
They didn't
Okay.
recommend including.
Any other questions on these parcels?
Not so much a question, but this kind of illustrates some of my, don't get me wrong, the GMA is there and it's serving a good purpose, right? But this kind of scenario is really, to me, it points out the flaws in this, is in that it's really, to some degree, it's preventing real smart, methodical development in the community. I mean, like with this, you'd have an opportunity to create a really positive mixed use environment, and then you look at like the development, that's kind of comes back to the development patterns and, what is happening, what is likely to happen. And, it makes it difficult to, and don't get me wrong, also, you shouldn't, I mean, just like development patterns shouldn't be the only thing considered, for sure. I mean, agricultural lands, all that should be considered, but it just prevents long-term smart growth, from taking place, and to some degree. But I mean, that was aside from the point, just kind of a frustration that I have.
I think that is something that could happen in the future, but I don't know that there's justification for it to happen now. And it goes back to before the GMA in terms of when these land divisions were made. So
Yeah,
in large part, we have to work with what we got.
right, and I agree with you on that. But just my point is that like that opportunity may not be. I mean, if there's 16 McMansions built, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to become a mixed use area. It's just once those houses are built, it's economically not viable.
And that's been the story of ag across the landscape, that there's a lot of those McMansions that have occurred on 5 acres.
I agree.
This is council conversation, and I think Councilor Little asked the question, and Jose answered it. When the city proposed this initially, it was for housing. And they realized that on the question of need, and capacity, they exceed what was allocated to them. So they came back and asked for a mixed use for employment. So that's why Jose asked the question or answered the question that we don't know. The plan of what they want to do keep on changing based on the question that they don't have. They have more capacity. And when you listen to the city staff testify, Councillor Young, they testify that they have more capacity in alternative one, which is the existing plan. They have more capacity in alternative two, and they have exceedingly more capacity in alternative three. So that's why the plans start changing. In my opinion, I may be wrong. So we did not run any model based on their email to staff to consider mixed use, because the original request was for housing.
Thank you. And just a follow-up to that, I believe BIA did a independent study of jobs and housing numbers, and the result of it said that the numbers that were projected were 30% more than reality of what happens on the ground. Is that true? Could you address that? And has that been, have the county's numbers been adjusted based on that study or not? It seems like a big space of different opinions on numbers. And I'm just curious what you all landed on.
I'm just trying to recall that. We received a couple of things from the building industry related to housing density, where they, I think it was in the urban medium and urban high zones, where they just looked at projects that were developed, like in the Vancouver UGA. There is currently a range of density that can be built. Typically, the type of housing that's built is the single family detached that usually comes in at the lower end of the density range. So, but they only looked at those. There was a whole other group that were done that were more multifamily site apartment buildings, and those came in at the higher end of the density range. The recommendation that we're making to council is to really eliminate that's only being built at the lower end of the density range because of the work that we did with expanding the types of uses that are allowed in our single family zone. That allows those types of developments in this bigger pool of residential land that we have. The urban medium and urban high is a much smaller pool of land, but we're achieving lower densities. And so we're trying to get higher densities being built there. I'm not recalling the 30% differential.
Don't we have to adopt provisions, and haven't we drafted provisions that plan for and provide for more dense housing because of the state housing law that was adopted a couple years ago? I mean, to the extent that these code provisions that the BIA's study was based on were adopted before the state housing law went into effect, you would expect that they would show lower density.
Well, if I may add to that, and I think that study, I mean, with all data, you have to be careful with it. What I think is illustrated is that the way we currently had it zoned, the capacity wasn't coming out that the model had anticipated. Now we're upzoning that land, and so now that old data doesn't apply here, but there still can be a pattern of development not happening to the capacity that we anticipate. And I think it's an important issue that needs to be considered.
Right, and that we did, and that's why we expanded the middle housing in what was the single family zone, which is a much bigger pool. We've known for years that the single family detached in the urban medium always comes in at the lower end of the range. And we also have apartments that come in at higher. Which one do you want to attract? Why would you not want to maximize the efficiency of that urban medium and urban high zone? That's what we're trying to do.
No, I agree with you on that. But what I'm just saying is what we zone it as and what ends up being developed is really kind of a mystery at this point. We really don't know because I mean, we're rezoning a bunch of spaces. We don't know how those areas are going to react to that new zoning.
Councillor, if I may, you're absolutely correct. This is why in our line of work, you call it planning. Some people said, no, it's not planning. We're just planning by numbers or spreadsheet. No, you make these changes, you develop, you see what is coming in. We've had this conversation that in some cases, development is not coming in terms of what the zone allows. And if, for example, the code says, and I know April is here, if the code says 12 units to 18 units to an acre, and the range is that, if I come in at 13, I am within the range. They cannot deny that, but it's not the maximum. So whose fault is that?
I would say that there could be a lot of things that you could blame the fault on. Some of it's
there
just
is
the
a lot
nature
of stuff. So what you do is you continue to make improvement going to what legal counsel was saying when the legislature passed this new bill 1110 and 1220. 1110 requires now you can build 2 ADUs, okay, on your property. We don't know how many property owners will do that, but we have to amend our code to allow for that. And then we are going to be monitoring when things develop, how many folks are building that 2 ADUs or even building ADUs on their property. And that then too, to plan for this increase in density, all you can do is plan for it. I usually say the county doesn't build anything. So when the development community looks at our code and develop, all we have to do is go back after 5 years and look at how have we developed. And I think I mentioned this, the state in requiring this also says, yeah, we're going to be collecting data. And they have charged the real estate division at University of Washington to be collecting this data from local jurisdictions so that they can report back to the legislature what is happening and how are we meeting that 1 million housing unit required in the entire state. So we are going to be monitoring based on the changes that the council and the cities have made to see what is happening on the ground, and that will inform the council in the future what to do going forward.
So we have built some of those assumptions already, have we not?
Okay, this is really valuable conversation, but I would like us to get to that last property. I think we just have one property left and try to wrap up in 5 minutes so that we can have a break before we reconvene at 1. Is that acceptable? Thank you.
I think that's it.
I think, Councillor,
Yeah.
that's it. It's just battleground.
Or, campus.
That's
The airport.
Airport, yeah. And the planning commission only recommended the airport.
I'd like to look at the airport.
Okay.
Okay.
I did have one more thing on this here.
Oh, on the other property? Okay,
Yeah,
quickly.
actually, it's not on this property. Oop, can you go back to where you just were on the map? There, right there. Yeah. Okay. That's the section that's kind of, I think it's pink there, the block, the square on the left side of the screen.
Uh-huh.
What does the pink mean?
Don't know if it's mixed employment.
Is that mixed employment? Is that mixed use?
Yeah, it's a zone within the
Within their growth
Camas
boundary.
city limits.
Okay. Because I did have some conversations that I think it's this land that they specified that has been in their urban growth boundary for like 20 years and has not been built out at all. Is that this particular section or is there a different area?
This was part of probably the 2007 expansion.
Okay, so that's about 20 years then, and it really hasn't done anything.
Well, I mean, you look at the aerials, there's a lot of,
Is the
area
city
that's-
recommending to do anything with that area?
no.
Okay.
No, it's already in their urban growth boundary. Yeah. And I
But it
don't
looks
know.
like it's largely vacant,
Yeah,
essentially.
I don't know. What I don't know, councillors, is whether they have annexed this property or not. It might be in their urban growth boundary. Does it have urban holding on it? Do we know?
I don't.
We can find out. But, you know, an area that is in urban growth boundary, if it hasn't been annexed, we might have urban holding on it. So we might find
Well,
that for you.
that is within their city limits because we don't have
Okay.
an ME zone.
Okay, so it's in the
within
city
Camas
limits. So we don't have control. We don't have control over what is happening in the city limits and their zoning.
2007 was a big year for expansion.
Yeah.
Okay, the airport. I'd like to see actually how much land is owned by the airport
Oh.
and if any of this is zoned ag.
No, this is all airport zoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the land around it, I think we're creating kind of a peninsula that jets out that is not in the city. And is that ag land there?
So let's see.
If Jose can put the zoning, I believe majority of this may be rural
The
five.
ag land is here,
Right.
in that orange
Oh, in the
space.
orange. Okay. And then it's
Everything else is
rural.
R5
Rural
around it.
five, yes.
Okay. All right. Just to note that, again, this makes for constrained area for agricultural use in the future. Okay, that's all I wanted to see. Any other questions about the airport?
No, I just wanted to thank you all this has been incredibly helpful to me. I have a huge headache, but it's because you've taught me a lot. So thank you.
Okay.
Well, you have a little time to recover before this afternoon. Any other comments or thoughts? Councillor Belcott, you've been unusually quiet.
No, it's just, well, because the three of us, you, Chair, and myself and Counselor Young have been going over this for years, literally. So now I
It
know.
seems like it. Great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Oliver, do you have any last word?
I just want to thank the council. Periodic update is, very challenging because you have multiple stakeholders and we are doing our best to help you make the final decision. Thank
And
you.
we appreciate that. And now for our next decision, and the public hearing will be, has that been scheduled yet? Because that is where we will be selecting the preferred alternative, the much anticipated.
Yeah, I know staff was reaching out to counselors to see availability. I think it's going to be on the 20th with a possible holdover or continuation for the 21st. So it'll be a Monday and a Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay, so and this will be not our usual time, so I think just making sure all the stakeholders are very aware of when we're going to be scheduling that. That would be great.
Yeah.
Is it planned for an evening meeting?
Tuesday is an evening meeting. Monday, we can't do it before 11. I know that.
Okay.
But we're not planning on doing it during the evening on the Monday.
Not planning on?
No. not
Oh.
on the Monday.
That's the final public hearing on that.
No, we're doing a special meeting and doing it on Monday. And then the Tuesday, the 21st, we have our already scheduled Tuesday night meeting. So we'll use that as a continuation if needed.
Right. If,
We're trying to avoid Wednesday morning continuation after a Tuesday night.
Yeah, I
public
get
hearing.
that, but it gives me heartburn having a daytime meeting, just trying to get the access to the public. Daytime meetings are tough. And this
But-
is a big decision.
yeah, potentially we could have a daytime and an evening if it continues. And given how we've talked about the comp plan update, there's probably a strong likelihood that it could continue. Go ahead.
And just to clarify, what we're making a decision on at that time will be the preferred alternative that will be analyzed so that we can get the information back so that we can make a final decision later,
Correct.
right? So just so the
That is-
public
that
knows
is a
that
good
isn't
point,
our
yeah.
final decision.
Yeah.
It's what we want analyzed.
And we will, I mean, obviously we have to do our notice requirements, but we'll be putting out a press release as well on this.
Excellent.
You're going to be, what is before you is the recommendation of the planning commission on the preferred. You can agree with the planning commission, you can make changes, that's what is going to be before you, councillors.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we have now all the information we could possibly need to make our decision. We just have to synthesize it. So that's on us. Thank you very much.